What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the In Great Company podcast. I am your host for today's conversation. If you don't know, my name is Ebenezer, host of Shaping the Culture podcast. But today, I'll be hosting In Great Company. Listen, the premise of this podcast is to dive deep in all the wonderful, beautiful stories of Betty's friends, all the friends that God has blessed her with that she calls a great time, great company. But what you may or may not know is Betty herself is great company. And so we wanted to take this episode to dive deep into her story so that we may be encouraged by all that God is doing in and through her. Betty, welcome to the In Great Company podcast. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm excited. This is a little different.
Yeah.
I now understand what everybody feels like every time I invite them to this podcast. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Excited to be here on your own podcast.
Yeah. It was interesting hearing you do the intro. It was very interesting, but you did good.
I appreciate
Thank you so
that.
much.
Listen, as long as you're happy, that's
I'm
all
very
that matters.
happy. You're doing great so far.
Thank you. So far. Thus
see.
far. I appreciate that. Well, I just wanted to start off this podcast by asking the question, for those who may or may not know you, you know, because in your episodes, you do a phenomenal job giving context to your guests, setting them up, giving them an opportunity to share their story.
Yeah.
But we have yet to share, you have yet to share your story.
Yeah.
And so where does your story begin?
It's interesting. Okay. I guess should I go back to childhood?
Let's do it.
Childhood?
Yeah.
Sure. Where does my story begin? Born in Ethiopia. I don't know if anybody knows that. Maybe they might know that because, you know, I always throw in some Amariña when I'm talking. Born in Ethiopia, raised in Florida. But I promise you, growing up in my house, it was like little Addis Ababa, little Ethiopia. It wasn't like growing up in Florida, which means my parents were very in the culture, very much eating injera all the time. So very, very Ethiopian household. They still barely speak English. They do well. They can get by, but they've been here like 30 years. So very Abishai parents.
Yeah.
Grew up in Florida, loved it. I got an opportunity to really spend a lot of time with my family because, you know, cost of living and everything was really simple and easy back then.
Yeah.
So my parents were home on the weekends. I have a younger sister. So we would go to parks and just spend a lot of quality time together. So I got a chance. There's 4 of us in the family, so we got a chance to really spend time together.
Yeah.
Came from a believing household. Both my parents are believers. And then moved to the DC area when I was 23 for grad school.
Okay.
So that's kind of high level, yeah.
How old were you when you moved to Florida from Ethiopia?
4 years old.
4. Okay. Do you have any memories from living back home, or?
I don't, fun fact, whenever people are talking about their childhood and they're like, I remember things when I was 2, I was like, I don't know how people, first of all, I have a hard time remembering things right now anyway, so maybe that's part of it, but I don't remember anything. I remember like uniforms, like elementary school, well, not elementary school, preschool, but I think that's probably like the pictures I've seen.
Yeah.
So I don't remember much, but we did go back home often to Ethiopia.
Okay.
So I got a chance to like get to know my family. We'd go like very often for summers. But yeah, 4 years old. So I started preschool. Yeah, preschool in Florida.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what life looked like when you did move to Florida. Because I have this picture of people who live in Florida.
Yeah, I know.
They're like absent-minded, but you seem pretty reasonable.
And I'm sure the minute you hear Florida, you're hearing all the jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is, all of those things, I didn't know about how bad Florida was until I left Florida.
Oh, okay.
And also as I became an adult. But again, for me, growing up, I went to school. Florida's very predominantly Hispanic, so I had a lot of Hispanic friends and knew the Hispanic culture.
Yeah.
I think even my first babysitter was Hispanic, so I picked up the language quickly and stuff. But outside of that, it was pretty Abishai household. Like, you know what I mean? Like my parents were very serious about our upbringing being very cultured.
Yeah.
And us keeping the language and stuff like that. But I don't know what else. I don't know how else Florida contributed to who I became.
For sure.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So my parents live in Florida right now.
Oh, true.
And it's cool because we've during the holidays, we'll be like, you're in town, I'm in town. We haven't linked yet. But one thing I've observed while being out there is there aren't a lot of Abishas.
No.
And so what was that like for you? Because you grew up in an Abisha household, but there's not a lot of, it's not like the DMV.
Yeah.
But what was that like for you?
Okay, so now I get your question. So in Florida, especially now, there's way more Abshas than there was back then.
Okay.
Back then, to the point, can I tell you a quick little So my parents, when they moved to Florida, were not believers.
Oh, okay.
So they were actually Orthodox.
Okay.
My dad, I don't really know what he claimed back then. My mother was like the cultural Orthodox. And this tells you a little bit about the Ethiopian culture or the Absha community back then.
Yeah.
So they moved, and the sponsors that they had, the people that they stayed at their houses, my mother asked her, hey, is there an Orthodox church that I can go to? And she was like, no, there's no Orthodox churches. We only have one church that we go to. It's a Pentecostal church. So my mom was like, okay, cool. I need community. Let's go. This is about 34 years ago.
Okay.
No, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So she goes to this church. She starts attending, my dad, myself, and her. And then they go to like some type of like gathering. I think it's like, you know, what would be like the English equivalent of like a wake for like a funeral or something like that. They're gathered at somebody's house, and a bunch of new people that she doesn't know, like within the Tampa community. I grew up in Tampa. Come, and when they come, one of them is like, oh, I just came back from like Mariam Church or like the Mary Church. And when she comes, my mom's like, wait, hold up, you told me that there's no Orthodox church. And then the lady that was sponsoring us or who we stayed with, she was like, oh, I just figured you don't need to go to an Orthodox church.
Wow.
You just need to go to a Pentecostal church. And my mom was like, I could have made that decision for my family. So then she was like, so there is an Orthodox church. And she's like, yeah. But the reason why I brought that story up is when we would gather, it would be Muslims, Christians, Ethiopians, Eritreans, like it didn't matter. It was like this entire community because it was so small.
I gotcha.
Maybe I don't know. I don't want to like mess up the numbers, but maybe like 10,000. Like I don't even think there was that many in that area back then. That's probably a really bad number, but it's a very small community, and everybody knew each other. Everybody gathered. Whereas I feel like here you have like these smaller communities. You know, like people are hanging out with kind of either their own families or they're kind of hanging out with their own community. So it was, and for us, it just kind of exposed us to everyone. And we would go to the malls, and I remember like if seeing an Abisha church person was like really like special. And I remember my dad being like, oh, who are you? When did you move here? Like, do you need help? Do you need family? And they would go and buy them like furniture if they need furniture. They'd invite them to the house. They'd take them like food if they need it. So it was very, very like, and I'd be like, oh, whose daughter are you? Who are you related to? And they would know immediately who it was. Whereas now I feel like it's grown enough that people wouldn't know. So
okay, that's crazy. Well, you know, my parents, whenever they miss Ethiopians, they'll just go to an Ethiopian restaurant. Because they're not running into Abishas just on the street or what have you. And so that's what's up. So wait, let's go back to the story of how your parents received Christ. Even I'm sure that'll bleed into how you received Christ. They got tricked in to go into a Pentecostal church. After that confrontation, what happened? Like, how did your host or your sponsor respond to your mom being like, "Hey, we could have made that decision"?
So anyway, so she finds out that there's an Orthodox church. I don't think my mom thought it was funny. I think she was probably annoyed by it. And then I remember, so I asked my parents like later on like what happened, and so my mom and my dad had been going to this Pentecostal church for about a couple months, I think, at this point. They built community, and like I said, they helped them move into their new apartment. They bought them furniture. My dad tells a story about like this one man like carrying the furniture on his back and help like setting up the bed for my parents and stuff like that. So they've built community with these people, and they've shown them love. And then so my parents were like, well, if we leave this community, we have to build a new community. They've been kind to us. They haven't said anything. You know, they've been so loving to us. And then my parents kind of had this conversation about like, okay, well, are they teaching us anything that's wrong? Is there anything that we disagree with? And I think they concluded, if anything, if any of the doctrine is something that we don't believe in, or if something happens, we'll leave. But for now, we'll stay. And the only doctrine that they had a hard time with, I remember specifically, was baptism. They were like, we've already been baptized. We don't need to get baptized. If you guys don't bother, if you guys leave us alone about this, we'll keep coming to the church. So they stayed for a while, and then slowly but surely, obviously, we're hearing the gospel, and they became believers, accepted the Lord. And then baptism, funny enough, when I became a teenager, I think I was like 13 or 14 when I got baptized. The whole family actually got baptized together. Because up until then, they refused to get baptized. Because to them, it was like, it was not necessary. Right. So that's kind of their conversion. They got tricked into it, but they stayed.
That's amazing.
The Lord did his work.
That's so dope. They got tricked into it, but what's so encouraging about that story is that it was the love of the community that kept them in the community. And I think so often in the church today, that's the
glue.
the glue, and it's missing oftentimes. What we try to do to bring people in is get good music, have a great children's ministry, that the preaching be on point. But Jesus said in his priestly prayer, the world will know that the Father sent me by the way they love each other. And I just find it so dope that the thing that kept your parents in the house of God was the love that they shared among each other. So did that love rub off on you too? Like, what, I know that's what kept your parents staying, but what's your story? How did you accept Christ?
So I think naturally, I think we all like kind of respond to the gospel differently. I naturally am pretty obedient, meaning I wasn't really rebellious. So my parents telling me to go to church wasn't an issue for me. I would attend church. If anything, I would probably I think I ended up becoming a little bit like the Pharisees, where it's like the Bible says do this, don't do this. So it kind of grew up very much. I loved the Lord, I think, from a young age, but I definitely just wanted to follow what I was being told. I didn't have any questions. I didn't question my faith. I kind of just followed, the narrow road that was placed before me. And then I got to college, and I think part of faith is until it's tested, you really don't know if you're a believer. So when I got to college, everything before college, I didn't feel like was a test. It was like, all right, like I love the Lord. I'm living in my parents' house. Like there's no real challenges or opportunity for me to be tempted. When I got to college, it felt like just little by little, everything, whether it was drinking or partying or people, it just felt like everything was being tested, and I would fail, and I would fail, and I would fail. And I remember everything that I believed, like all of the foundational things that I believed, it was never based off of my own understanding. It was based off of what everybody else had told me. So it's like, why don't you drink? Well, the church said not to. Why don't you party? Like, it was never, like, I was like, did I even read the Bible? Like, I don't even think if I actually sat down and really studied enough to have my own convictions. So as soon as literally somebody, came and questioned it, I started falling. Like, there was no real solid foundation. And then before I knew it, I just remember having a moment of, like, looking back and saying, like, who is this person? Like, I just did not even recognize who I was, because I think I also prided myself in, like, being a good Christian girl. And now that girl's gone. So who is here? And I had to, like, rebuild this understanding. And I remember just being like, oh, I literally am following the faith of my parents. I have no idea who this God is on my own. But until I was tested, I really, truly believed I was a Christian.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's real. So what you're saying is you had a past.
I had a past.
Okay. Like what?
A little bit of past.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Do you have any stories you'd like to share?
I think from college, I think the biggest thing for me, I don't want to make it seem like it's super clean or like super bad, but I think the biggest thing for me, I just remember, like, there's this one in high school. I was a part of, like, the Bible club and everything. Like, I just feel like I prided myself in being a good Christian, and like it was just kind of like a badge of honor for me. Whereas if you really asked me questions, I had no kind of basis for anything that I was saying. And then when I got to college, I just remember I loved music, but I just felt like everything I did just became like kind of like following the crowd. People party, so I partied. People drink, so I drank. People went out. Everything that I did was based off of like just having fun. And then, but the whole time, I just remember being like, I don't know who I am. I feel like I'm just going wherever everybody else is going. I don't have an understanding of who God is, but then the conviction's there. Like I am miserable internally, but having fun externally. I don't know. I think I could give you like high level, but that's pretty much it.
I feel like, my pastor used to always say, if sin isn't fun, you're not doing it right.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun, but internally.
You were dying on the inside.
I was on the inside. The funny thing, I remember there's like a part, like a season where it was like literally we would go out like every day, and then on Sunday I'd be at church, and I'm like, why am I here? Like, what is the reason why I'm here? But again, it wasn't for me to learn. It was like kind of like, oh, I'm supposed to be here.
That's real.
It was very conflicting. I felt like I was living in two worlds, and it just was very miserable.
The reason why I asked that is because I think oftentimes in the church and Christian communities, we're so quick to talk about the grace of God before unpacking the wickedness of our sin. And I think what makes the grace of God so attractive is understanding what it took him to be so gracious to us. And so the moment we diminish our sin, we also diminish the blood of Christ, right? And so what was that moment? Because it sounded like you were living this duplicit lifestyle where on one end you're having fun with your friends, but internally you're like, this isn't me. This isn't resonating with who I am. Was there a turning point? Did you have a defining moment, or did you just slowly over time stop doing the things that your friends were doing? Like, what was that moment for you?
No, there was definitely a moment. So for me, particularly for me, I was dating someone.
Okay.
And the person that I was dating, to make the story a little shorter, when I met him, he was the type of person that I said I would never date. Atheist, didn't believe in God. I mean, atheist, but also just, I think he was like a party promoter. Like, it was just everything that I would never
so
do.
Crazy. I can't even see you being with the party promoter.
College.
But God, no.
No, but I think, I don't know. I think earlier you said something about like, with God, I feel like until you really understand what Christ has done for you, until you really understand the weight of sin, I feel like if I had not experienced those things, I truly would have been a Pharisee. One, I would not have been able to relate to other people. I think two, I would have always been kind of maybe looked down upon people that struggled with sin, because in my head it's like, why? You could just, which is, it's possible. You could just truly just follow Christ.
That's right.
He's enough. But at the same time, I think for me, I needed to see how weak I was. I think I depended on my own strengths for my faith. Like, I'm not going to stumble. I'm not going to mess up. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do this. And with this specific person, I think it just like any relationship, dated him. But then at the very end of it, I just remember being like, how did I get here? And I just remember having this moment of like, how did I get here? How did I get to the point where I'm dating the type of person I shouldn't be dating? I am going places where I shouldn't be going. I just remember being like, I do not know who I am. I don't remember specifically what made me get to that moment. I just remember just having an aha moment. My response to it was actually interesting, because sometimes now when I'm like talking to like younger sisters and I'm like discipling people, they'll be like, I'm having a hard time disconnecting from friends. My solution was, how on an airplane, they'll be like, put your own life vest on first. I was like, I don't need nobody. It's like, literally, the minute I kind of understood, okay, you are, I think the best way that I could describe it, it was like being in the pits of hell. Like, not hell, but like just being at the very bottom, like the lowest point of my life, right? Everybody's lowest point looks different. That was my lowest point. And I just remember being like, I'm the furthest away from God that I ever have been. One sin after another sin. And eventually you get to this point. And I just remember being like, I'm really far away from God. I just remember knowing that and feeling that. And my immediate response was, okay, I have to win back his graces. I have to work myself back to this place. And the only way that I could do it is I need to drop everything and everyone, put on my own life vest. Funny story, my school, this is probably my junior year. So from freshman year to junior year, I'm like working my way up to this place. And I remember there was like this kind of like a weird, I think anyone that went to USF, I went to University of South Florida, remembers there was like this season of like a huge group of us that were like, there was like this Bible study called Bible Study Live. It was a bunch of random kids that started it, and it was just like a huge, even in the middle of like the student hall, like all of us would gather and just literally read the Bible. And I remember they would have Monday night Bible study. It was like, I think it was like a co-ed. Tuesday was like men, Wednesday was women. It was like every single day there was like some type of Bible study or gathering, because I think everybody was kind of just like, oh crap, we have to like get ourselves together. I remember my way of redeeming myself was like, I'm attend every Bible study, every church service, everything possible to put myself in the proximity of God. And even then I didn't understand that you're not earning his grace, it's given to you. But I just remember being like, I'm going to do everything to gain this forgiveness, because I feel so bad for being so far away from God. Yet, lo and behold, he really is just there and he's willing to give it to you. I didn't have to do none of that, but it took a while to understand that too.
That reminds me of the prodigal son. Where like on his way back, he's got this whole speech prepared. And he's like, all right, this is what I'm going to say to him. He's got it outlined. He's ready to go. As soon as he sees the father, what's crazy is the father sees him from a distance. That goes to show how much he loves his son, because he's been awaiting his son's return. But by the time he sees him, he runs to him. He's got a little tunic. And then he like pulls up his skirt or whatever, and then he like runs, exposes his feet. Jewish culture, men don't do that. All of that. And before the prodigal son could give his speech, the father is rejoicing over the fact that
excited,
his son is back. And so what was that kind of like the moment for you? Like what, because here you are thinking, let me go to these Bible studies, let me do this, let me do X, Y, Z, and then I'll be in God's good grace again.
Yes.
But I'm pretty confident that the Lord was already running. What was that moment like for you?
I think I couldn't see that the Lord was near, and I couldn't see that example that you gave of the prodigal son with the father running towards me, because the shame was so evident, or like it was so present to me. And I think the enemy does that in a way to keep you, like, it's almost like if the father is here and you're here, the shame is the middle, the bridge between you two, or the wall between you two. And for me, until the Lord is able to allow me to see that shame is not his, and that the enemy's the one that's bringing that shame to the forefront, it was hard. It was challenging. Because I think, again, sometimes when you grow up in the church, it's a very works mentality. Like, I don't know when or how it becomes that way, but I think the understanding that I did have, I loved him, I feared him, even as a child. But I think I understood, I just revered him in a way that I never want to disappoint him. And if I did, I didn't know that I had grace to return. So when I did mess up, this shame was like, how am I supposed to, I just want to be in his presence, but in his presence, I'm nervous to approach him because I don't know what he's going to say. I don't know if he's going to throw all of my sin in my face.
Right.
So literally the Lord had to kind of explain. I remember just having this one moment in, again, one of the Bible studies, and I remember the young lady that like was praying with me, and I just remember breaking down and be like, I have to figure this out. Like, I have to. She's like, there's nothing for you to do. Just literally ask for forgiveness and move on. Like, there's nothing for you to do. And I think until it took a while for me to get that. And I think a lot of people deal with that too. But once I did, it was like, oh, he's loving, he's kind, he's so present. And that story of the prodigal, there's a book called The Prodigal Father. I think it's
by
called
Tim Keller. Prodigal God.
Prodigal God. Thank you. That was a very powerful book for me, even recently, because it really paints that picture of like, okay, I've come back home. And again, like, I think sometimes when people hear, okay, I don't know if you're old school, like, like rap culture or Christian rap. Do you know who The Truth is?
Of course. Okay. Do I know The Truth? Yes, I know him.
Right. You know that one song that he has where he's like, I don't have a testimony or something like that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So basically the whole song is like, I'm a Christian boy that grew up in a Christian church or whatever, and like a Christian household, and I don't have a testimony. So that used to always be like my thing, was like, I don't have a testimony. And I remember even like, part of like sharing my testimony or like this story to me was like, people have wilder stories, or people have like, more colorful stories. So like mine is not that deep, but to me, it was really hard for me to come back to the Lord. But yet when you hear other people's stories, it's like, oh, like I understand why they struggled. Like what did you do kind of thing. But I've learned that like each one of us, sometimes it's more internal than it is external.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that build our stories. So
that's good. Yeah. I heard recently, the good news of the gospel is not something you achieve, it's something you receive.
Amen.
It's not something you earn, it's something you just.
Amen.
And so I love that. I think your story is so powerful because even as a Christian, that's the temptation, right? I've been following Jesus for so many years. And if I were to be honest, there are seasons in my life where I'm like, I get that there's grace for me to get saved, but is there really grace for me to be sustained?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I get that I was bad at one point and he saved me.
Yeah.
But when you've been a Christian 10, 15, 20 years, it's like, there's still more grace.
Yeah.
Like, because I even find myself thinking, okay, let me spend some more time with the Lord and then I'll be in his good grace. Let me memorize the scripture and the Lord would give me favor. But how he saves us is how he keeps us. It's by grace and grace alone. And so I love that. That's such a powerful story. As we're thinking about your podcast a little bit, I love the premise. I love your why. I don't know if you want to share this story or if you want me to set it up, but I do know your heart really is to share God's goodness through story.
It's good.
And through that, people can maybe be introduced to the love of God, the goodness of God, and how typically a lot of the times people get introduced to God is through debate, evangelism, apologetics, so on and so forth. But what I love about your platform and your podcast is you're just sharing stories. Yeah. And my question for you is, what is your heart's desire as you share your story for the listener?
Yeah. And I know this is kind of the last episode, but initially, and I'm excited to say that, but initially, my desire was two things, two specific things.
Yeah.
One was for the person that's coming to sit in the seat and to be interviewed, I really wanted them to kind of look like as if they're looking in a mirror and see the goodness of God in their life. I think it's funny enough, even as I'm telling my story, I'm like, oh, wow, the Lord has been really good to me. Like, he's actually, there's a lot of things that I don't share that we don't get a chance to talk about.
Yeah.
Even being friends. I remember when we were going to New York, in January, you were sharing a little bit of your story. And I was like, we are always passing by one another, even close friends, like people that live in the same city as me, people that I do life with regularly. We don't ask them questions. We don't ask them about their life. We don't ask them how they got to where they got to. We just assume, or we think that we already know, right? And I think, so for them to be able to share their story, it's almost like looking in the mirror and saying like, okay, wow, look what God has done. My life is actually a lot more colorful, a lot more beautiful. The Lord is woven his love and just such a very intricate story through my life. It's like looking in the mirror. For the audience, I wanted them to see people's lives and say, oh yeah, me too. Or to look at it and say, okay, if God can do this in his life or her life, look what he can do in my life. Or he can take me out of this addiction. He can, put me in this place, or he can bless me the way that he's blessed these people. So those are my two very, very, those were my desires. And I think God has been faithful, because literally that's what I've been witnessing. And I think it's been really cool seeing each episode. I've gotten, and I probably touch more on it too, but I've gotten even like DMs from people that I don't know. I've gotten even the actual people that I've attended or that I've interviewed will respond to me and be like, oh my God, the people keep stopping me and telling me, their own friends, people that attend church with them, oh my God, like, I didn't know your story was like this. It's so encouraging. And I see how they light up. Like, they get so excited. And it's like, no, like, your story's amazing.
That's
like, you have a great story to tell. And I've enjoyed hearing it. Everybody's enjoyed hearing it. So those are the things that I feel like.
I love it.
That's what's been exciting me about it.
Yeah. So this might be a little bit more of a technical question, because I know you've been wanting to start this podcast for years. And I remember January 1st, I had you, Sheesh, and Yordi on Shaping the Culture.
First of all, I wasn't supposed to be on that episode. I was going to, just
but the
give you all
sovereignty of God. But look at the sovereignty of God.
Clearly.
And we had a very honest conversation off and on the air about this is going to be the year where we have to go for it. Yeah.
What did you say? Do it scared?
Do it scared.
It's ringing in my ear the whole year.
Do it scared. I'm still scared of it. Anyway, so you did it.
Yeah.
You're doing it. Yeah. What I wanted to ask you was, as you're hearing these testimonies, as you're getting the feedback that you're getting, why is it important to truly pursue what God's put on your heart? Because I feel like you're just getting a small taste of your obedience. There's so much more to experience. I'm rooting for you. I believe the best is yet to come. This is just the start. But as you're seeing just a little bit of what God has for you, how are you processing the fact that it took you this long?
Okay, there's a lot of questions right there. I think the fact that it took me this long, I can see why, because again, I was trying to do it on my own. I think two things happened. One, shout out to teams, bro. Shout out to people that believe in you. They're here in the studio. Because I think the minute, I remember a specific conversation, I had the realization, I was like, okay, I got a lot on my plate. I'm not going to do this. I know I'm going to keep pushing this. So if I can find someone that's excited about this as much as I am, even just a little bit, then I can actually if that person can work on certain parts of it, and then I can work on another. And as soon as I mentioned that to a friend, she was like, okay, this person wants to work with you. Like, they'd be amazing at it. And her excitement, her response to it was also very exciting. And I think as soon as I did that and I started, I realized, okay, yes, it takes your obedience. You're supposed to say yes, but sometimes it takes other people with you. So it's not just supposed to be you. I feel like if it was just me, one, I would have kept delaying, and that's probably why I delayed. And two, I don't think I would have gone far. I don't think it would have been sustainable. I think
Yeah.
in God's plan, it was supposed to be with other people.
That's good.
Because I've seen how they've gotten excited and how they've been blessed by it too.
Yeah.
And it's been very humbling for me too to see that, hey, this is not just a you thing, this is a group thing. And then it was your other part of the question.
Yeah, just as you're experiencing the fruit of everything, like how are you internalizing this whole process?
It feels like kind of like I said yes. So when I initially said yes, it felt like, all right, I'm tired of people asking me questions. I've already, opened my mouth and said something. Accountability is very annoying, but it's good. So at that point, I was just like, I'm just going to do it. If it fails, it fails. Whatever happens, I can say I did it, and I'm just checking it off a list. That's literally what my thought process was. And then I had people to help me, so great. Let me just do this, see what happens, whatever. And then when it started going and it caught momentum and it's doing well, it kind of felt like the Lord is driving the bus and I'm now a passenger. It was no longer me. So the idea is the way that it worked. I very much released control. The team, like we would talk about ideas together. How do we want to promote this? Who do we want on the podcast? What, like even the technical, who comes on first and who comes on second, like even the order of things, it really just became a team effort, and I really felt like the Lord was driving it. And then even the results and the way people are responding to it and the way people are blessed, it's like, even if I only got one DM, I feel like I would have been blessed by it, because again, I never had the expectation to know, like, I want X amount of, responses or X amount of views. It was like, whatever happens. I'm just going to say yes and do what I was told to do.
That's good.
So it's been surreal. And I think I want to continue to allow it to be this way, where it's like, God's got it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I love how you talked about it being a team effort. I think about the man that was lame and he had his friends carry him.
Powerful.
Powerful. Yeah. And it's just like, he did what he could do to get to Jesus, but what he could do wasn't good enough to get to Jesus. He needed individuals to help carry the vision, carry the dream, or what have you.
I think when the Lord said, hey, it's your your friend's faith that saved you, that statement always sticks with me, because then it's like, okay, sometimes people have ideas, but we are part of the execution. We are part of taking our faith, taking it to the next step. It's not just the person that has the idea is not the person that does everything. Does that make sense? So even with that story, whether it's healing, whether it's an idea, I think there's a lot more times if we were to work as a group, we'd probably do a lot more faster.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you too, as you're in the middle of it all, because I think we have an idea of how this thing will go when we start. And then when we're actually doing it, you're like, oh, I got to pivot here. I thought this would look like this. I guess it's going to be this. Okay, twofold question. What is something that you've learned about yourself and something you've learned about what you want this podcast to accomplish?
I still want this podcast to remind people and to get people excited about stories. I heard someone once say, so for example, if you think about even tragedies like 9/11 or, COVID, when you hear, 10,000 people, X amount of people have died, it's like, oh, wow, that sucks. But when you hear a person's story about one, like if you specifically hear about one person's story, now it becomes very real to you. So I feel like we forget how powerful stories are. We forget how powerful testimonies are. And it doesn't always have to be a testimony, right? I think each person, funny enough, each person that's been on the episode has been a believer and has shared how they've, accepted the Lord. But just their stories, what God is doing in their life, and how He's doing it, I think is powerful.
That's right.
And that's what I want to keep highlighting. And I want people to be encouraged that they have a story, and that other people's stories are worth listening to. So
that's good. Okay, just real quick, because I'm really moved by. I've been really thinking about this a lot in this season of my life. This idea of story. We are moved by the narratives that we tell ourselves. When we wake up in the morning, what gets us going is not our tasks, it's not our responsibilities. It's the narrative that we've got going on, right? Steve Jobs didn't sell the iPhone by giving facts about the iPhone. It's by painting a picture, telling a story, right? It's not like when you saw a commercial for an iPhone, you saw like
I have to go get it.
You saw Christmas morning, the kids waking up. There's the iPhone under the tree, and now they're making memories. He could just tell you the facts about the camera. but it's capturing special, stories is what sells the thing.
It has to move your heart. It has
to move your
create
heart.
Emotion. Yeah.
And when I even think about Jesus in 3.5 years of ministry gave 5 sermons. We reference the prodigal son story. That's primarily spoken parables, stories.
Yeah.
That's how he moved the heart of. So can you also riff on a little bit the power of storytelling and how that has moved people as they're tuning into In Great Company? Yeah.
I think storytelling does 2 things. One, I think it allows you, when your emotions are connected to something, you don't forget it. You continue to listen to it for sure. Right. Like you're bought in, right? I think the way that when you hear a story, you're excited about what's coming next, right? So like you're really bought in. You're curious of how it's going to end, right? And it doesn't have to be like the greatest storyteller, as long as, because I mean, when you're talking about your own personal life, you are the greatest storyteller for your own life, right? And I think people are excited because they're excited about what you're about to say next. They don't know what the future is going to look like. They don't know what the story is going to be like. And your story is a story that's never been told, so they're excited about that. And then also, I think, as people are hearing stories, it's like they want to see themselves, right? They want their emotions to be bought in. They want to feel things. They want to hear things, but they also want to be like, okay, like for example, when you talk about, I grew up in a Christian home, immediately my thought is, oh yeah, me too. I wonder how I relate to that. Like, what did his parents do that my parents didn't do? So like, we are so quick at like trying to relate. So I feel like stories do that for people. It allows them to be a part of the conversation instead of just listening.
I love that. Yeah. I like how you put it. It allows people to be a part of the conversation. And at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants.
I just want to be included.
We just want to be seen. We want to be loved.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's why we're moved when we see movies. We immediately identify ourselves with the main character, the villain, whatever it is. Yeah.
And even the people that have been on the episodes, I feel like when they feel like they've been seen, and it's like, okay, so when you have celebrities, like, we've heard Steve Jobs made biography so many times, so we kind of know it. We may, if I see like kind of a YouTube commercial for it, I may not click on it, but when it's a friend or someone that you haven't heard their story, you're curious. And I feel like, and then whenever I see my friends like feel seen, the way that they're encouraged about life and excited, it's like it's priceless. So I think that itself has just been nice to witness as well.
I did want to say this. I think something that's special about In Great Company is you're adding value to people. And you're giving an opportunity to show the goodness and the vastness of God by giving a platform for his stories through the lives of your friends. And so that's dope. Okay, I got a couple more questions before we kind of land the plane.
Now I'm comfortable.
She said we can go another hour.
Good.
When you like think back first season, crazy to think you're wrapping up.
That's wild.
Your first season, you did it. Congratulations.
Thank you. Shout out to the team again.
Shout out to it's a team effort, right? Carrying the vision. What is your favorite memory from season 1?
I think the first, actually I have a really funny one. So I think the first person that I recorded with was Andy. And I had it scheduled for a Monday. And I was so nervous. I was like, so I'm supposed to prep them. I don't send them all the questions, but I send them like 1 or 2 questions. And I was supposed to send it to him. I didn't say anything to him. And knowing Andy, he's very organized, so he wants to be prepped. So I think it was like the Thursday or Wednesday before, he's like, are you going to send me information on it? I was like, yeah, I'll send it to you. And then I low-key, like, I kind of didn't want him to say anything because I was like, if he forgets about it, I can cancel this. I don't have to do this. And that's how nervous I was. And I'm the one that's interviewing. So like now looking back, I'm like, why was I so nervous to ask people questions? But I was very nervous. And then
#growth.
I know. Thanks. And then he actually made a joke about it on the Monday, the morning, the afternoon, I think 2-3 hours before. I was like, hey, by the way, we're still on to record today. And he joked later on. He was like, I mean, were you going to cancel? Like, I know we're on. Like, why are you telling me that? But in my head, I'm like, if at any point, it's like, you know how when you're hanging out with your friends and they're like, you still hanging out today? Like, if they canceled, I will not be disappointed. Like, it'll be good.
I'm an introvert. I get that. That's cool.
Exactly. It's cool. I'm so sorry. We'll do this next time.
Yeah, for sure.
So I felt, for a couple episodes, I felt like that. So even hearing my voice and like hearing the shaking and stuff like that, I remember being like, dang. But then it got better.
You did it scared.
I did it scared.
You did it with voice shaky and all. Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Real quick, after you finished that first episode, what was, because there might be somebody tuning in right now who is like trying to do what God has called them to do, and they've got all these different fears. when you completed that first episode, what did that feel like for you?
A relief. I'll give you another. So I think at this point I'm learning anything public speaking is scary to me until I do it. I had to do announcements for church for the first time.
Okay.
Boy, I was like, I wanted to delay it. I wanted to cancel it. I rehearsed it. It was so horrible for me.
Yeah.
And I remember the very first, when they gave me the mic, I literally was shaking so much. I was like, I don't want it. I just gave the mic back. So until you do something the first time, it's gonna be scary.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Honestly, just do it. I don't know if there's any like. I would rehearse it. It didn't get easier until I did it. Yeah. I think you kind of need to see yourself in that room, doing what you need to do, and then being like, oh, okay, I can do it. I don't know if I would have believed that I could do it until I saw myself do it.
Yeah.
So relief and then kind of confidence of like, oh, okay, I could do this. It's not that bad. I didn't die.
Yeah. That reminds me, Will Smith, when he turned 50 years old, he went like bungee jumping, did some crazy stuff.
Okay, I think I saw some of those. Yeah.
And I love what he said. He was on a talk show talking about his experience, and he said, some of the most beautiful things in life are on the other side of fear. And if we would just overcome the fear, and the fear is crazy because it really robs us.
It's really crippling. Like, it's like, I'm an adult. Why am I still scared of talking in front of people? But yet it will literally, and I mean, honestly though, I'll be real with you. Part of it is like, it's embarrassment. You don't want to mess up in front of people. If it's a private thing, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything private that I'm terrified about.
Right.
But if it's a public thing, it's like, just the fear of man. Like, I don't want to mess up in front of people. I don't want to look silly. I don't want to look dumb.
Yeah.
So I think also when you understand, like, oh, it's not that deep. We're all human. We're all going to mess up.
Yeah.
People are going to forget about it. And then the bigger thing is you learned from it and you grew.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I think part of it too is we want the first episode to be the best episode.
Yeah.
And it's like, if this don't kill, then I failed.
Then I failed.
It's like, it's going to be terrible. You just got to keep showing up.
Yeah.
But your first episode was phenomenal. You have really good friends. Watching your podcast, that's what I was like. Even the little the intros that you put on IG would suck me in. I was like, what happened here? the couple that got
the one that they met when they're like 6 years old, and he proposed to her when he first asked her.
I was like, I gotta watch this episode because this is wild, right?
It was a wild episode. They're funny. Funny. But I think it also goes to show, like, literally your friends are a great story. Like, they have some great stories. Like, you don't really have to go far. All season, I have not had to go far to find stories. They're literally right around me.
That's a word.
So I think,
that's a word.
I don't think we put value into what's right next to us.
Good. Yeah, I heard somebody asked someone, how do I level up? Like, how do I get in the room with so-and-so? And this person's response was, everybody's trying to network vertically.
Yeah.
You're supposed to network horizontally because there's a lot of value among your peers. And 5 years from now, that friend that you overlooked might be the next CEO, or that friend that you overlooked might be the person that opens the door for you 2 years down. So putting value in people that are around you, because you never know what God's gonna do in their life.
And I think it's, I mean, from the beginning, it was never, I feel like, like, famous people got platforms. Like, they have their stories are being told. The ones that their stories not being told are the ones right next to us.
Right.
And we're not talking to. So it's like, how are we friends with people for years and not knowing? Like, we don't even know how they grew up, where they grew up. And it's like, I've known some of my friends for 10 years, 8 years. I have no idea what their childhood was like.
Right.
And it's like, why not? Like, we talk about everything. We're over here debating every theology, every doctrine possible. I was like, just ask them how like who they are and like about their life. So I think it's kind of cool to be able to stop and kind of like ask people questions. It's been kind of fun. Yeah.
No, that's dope. All right. Okay. And then my last question. Is you talked about your favorite memory from season 1.
Yes.
What are you looking forward to as you anticipate season 2?
The stories again. And I've like said this so many times. I think I also really enjoy hearing people talk. Like, even as we're sitting here, I'm like, oh, I wonder what I could ask about, Ebenezer's life. Like, I'm literally thinking about like, people's lives and what's going on in their heads and like what they're thinking and how they grew up and why they grew up the way they are. And kind of just, okay, well, he moves this way, he does this, like, oh, he became a pastor. Why did he become a pastor? How did he become, like, part of, like, you told me a little bit of your story about how, that mentor that you had that kind of encouraged you when you were becoming a pastor. I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about.
That encouraged me to pastor?
Yes.
My youth pastor?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, I said it quickly, but I think about that often because that stuck with me. And I'm like, okay, that is a huge part of his story. So for me, even next season, it's like, I don't know, who am I going to talk to? Like, whose story am I going to hear? And I'm enjoying it just as much, I hope, as much as the audience is enjoying it. So that's literally what I'm looking forward to. It's very simple for me.
Yeah. Surprise. You just got to have to stay tuned. Huh? You never know who's going to sit in the seat.
Yeah, we never know. We never know.
I love it.
I think you're going to be the only one that interviews me, though. I think I'm done with this side.
Nah, I kind of like it. I think every season closer or finale should be.
Ask me questions.
Yeah. This might be the new rhythm.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've learned. I've been humbled. I know what they feel like.
Yeah.
I have understood how they feel coming into the studio. So
it's like what you were talking about earlier. Now you have grace.
I have grace for them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll be kind. I'll still ask questions, but you know.
For sure.
That's
awesome.
Yeah. This is awesome. No, thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Of course. It's an honor. It's a great joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a wrap, guys. This is the end of season 1. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to all the guests that have joined us and told their stories. As you can see, there's a different studio. So we will see you in this studio next season. Bye.